Hi there. Thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in into my channel called Garden a Little. My name is Seema, the host, and here we are in my garden. Guys, it finally rained. So if you are in the Midwest area, you probably are aware of this. There has been a drought for like a month, and I'm talking about dry heat drought. Like no sprinkles, no dew even on the ground in the mornings. So it finally rained yesterday, and it rained good. Now I've been watering my garden from our well system, so the water's pretty good quality wise. However, nothing compares to natural rain. So let's walk around and I'll show you what's been going on. By the way, I do have 7 chickens, and last video showed you that they've been eating their own eggs, and I think they got embarrassed because they stopped doing that all of a sudden. I didn't change anything. Let's start here in my garlic bed here. I planted garlic and corn together. Now, is it the smartest idea? I don't know. You have to tell them apart, so be careful not to pull the wrong garlic out of the ground. But they are pretty easy to tell apart. This is corn and this is garlic. Garlic is much heftier, very strong, versus corn is kind of flimsy and lighter in color. I planted this garlic last October, buried it deep inside. There were just garlic cloves laying around in my fridge, rotting away. So I said, what's the worst that can happen? This is my first time planting garlic. Put them in the ground, put a whole bunch of mulch over top of it. Not even mulch, just like leaves and whatever I can find in my chicken coop on top of there. And then early spring, garlic started growing. So I think my experiment succeeded. Garlic is a lengthy commitment because you have to wait for those 2 to 3 leaves to die off. As you can see, this one is starting to die off, and when 3 of these die off, then it's time to harvest. Here is that hodgepodge messy bed, and because it rained, you can also see how many weeds have sprouted. I am pretty embarrassed of this bed, but I do want to show you all the bad, the ugly, and the good here. My sunflowers are doing fantabulous. Now, again, I did not sow these sunflowers. Some wild bird did. I just replanted them in the row here. So we'll see what kind they are, because I have some smaller ones, bigger ones, and so on. Then I have my kale. I've been eating this for salads at work all the time. And then my 2 zucchini plants are finally taking off. Woohoo! And then my currant plants, I think this is black or green currant. And again, black or green currant, and some raspberries. Actually, this raspberry did survive. Then a whole bunch of weeds. And then in this corner, that's where I sowed my quinoa. Now, is there actually quinoa growing? No one knows. This is the crop of the year. I really wanted to try something new, and I picked quinoa because I eat quinoa. I like quinoa. Now, I sowed quinoa in my pots, and some sprouted, and then I replanted them, watered them, and then a week later, I left for a trip. Very responsible of me, I know. But I don't know if what survived are weeds or actual quinoa. So my hypothesis here is that this kind of plant here is quinoa. Now I think this also looks the same. This looks similar, but it also these two look very similar to weeds as well that grow in Ohio here. So I don't know. I guess time will tell. Now, another thing that I sowed here is my mother-in-law gave me a whole bunch of seeds, like melon seeds, that she really enjoyed this melon. And she's just like, oh, sow all of them. They probably won't sprout. Well, all of them sprouted, so that's good. So if you have a bed like this or an area of a garden like this is a great opportunity to learn and observe the plants. Now, not everything has to be picture perfect or perfect even. If you learn how things grow, how they mature, how much space they need, that in itself is a valuable harvest. My strawberry bed have been absolutely fantastic. As you can see, there are many, many berries here, and I've been harvesting every other day, like basketfuls of strawberries. I have a whole bowl of strawberries in my fridge right now. Now, strawberries are pretty easy. I eat them raw for the most part. Now, if there has been a time that there are too many of them, I share. But for the future, if it gets to the point that I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm strawberried out, I don't want any strawberries, Making jam is super, super easy. Sugar, berries, some pectin, and you're good to go. You don't have to can it. You can just store it in your fridge. So strawberries are definitely a crop for me that I can eat, enjoy, preserve pretty easily. My tomato bed is finally looking alive somewhat. Now, some of these are weeds, but I'll take a win when I can get one. These two are blush tigers that I need to transplant somewhere here. These supposed to be slicers, but again, if you remember, after I left to my trip, the temperature dropped down to, freezing, so nothing was covered, and then it stayed dry and nobody watered. So, I kind of put my tomatoes through a grind here, and some of them pulled through, most of them didn't. And so I found volunteers throughout my garden, transplanted them in here. Now, I already talked about the beauty of transplants. It's wonderful that they are so resilient to weather. They are just so strong compared to what you transplant, but you also don't know what you're getting. So that's an exciting part for me, because what if I'm growing a new type of tomato that crisscrossed, cross-pollinated, whatever thing happened to it? So I'm very excited about this tomato patch. Now, there are a couple of things that I do know what I put in the ground, and it is what it is. And so, I don't know, I'll bring you along. My pepper bed here, okay, my peppers are starting to finally look somewhat like they are growing. Like you can see like 2 more leaves on here. It's so sad that it's taking them forever to grow. I'm telling you guys, these have been in the ground the same amount of time as like this tomato. This is a transplant tomato, not a volunteer. And look how big this tomato is compared to the peppers. It is so wild to me. But then I also got the store-bought transplants, and of course they look a lot better. These are the sweet banana store-bought. These are also supposed to be sweet banana in this row. Now I have 1, 2, and then there's maybe a sprout there, questionable. And then these are supposed to be like spicy big Thai hybrid peppers. So we'll see what comes of it. Again, because it rained, all kinds of sprouts happened of weeds and not weeds, so we'll take it as we go. Here's my corn bed, and as I have recently discovered, also tomato bed. Look at these volunteer tomatoes, guys. These are huge. So again, that's another beauty of volunteers, is that, for example, once you grow a tomato or a dill, you will never get rid of tomatoes or dill from your garden, especially if you allowed them to go overripe and drop their fruit, because the seeds spread like wildfire. The next garden season, it's just there. It just happens. I am very excited for this corn. I love sweet corn, and so this is that type. And then I have, I've planted some seeds here from like the papers. I think you've seen that before in the channel. Now I don't know if that's what's sprouting, but definitely some kind of melon. I don't know if I sowed anything like that here, but here it is. And then some kind of radish. And I did sow radishes here, but it's only one that sprouted. So I don't know. We'll see. Then here are my beans, guys. These are my green bush beans, and they are finally flowering. I did harvest a couple already because they were looking ready. So this is looking really gorgeous and great. I've been harvesting from this dill, and look at my zinnias, guys. Finally, the rain literally woke them up. I love it. Here are those peas. Now, this one I will probably be cutting down here soon because it is dying off. And I really want my melons to start taking off. I think the shadow that this casted onto them is kind of stunting them, because I have melons here, and then spaghetti squash there. But overall, I will definitely recommend starting your peas indoors and transplanting them, because look at this comparison. I don't know if you can see it here, but these plants on that side were transplanted. These ones started just in the ground. And I harvested maybe 4 or 5 peas from here versus I've been consistently harvesting from these guys. Now that is wild to me because I always thought, especially here in Ohio, once that milder weather hits, the ground defrosts, you put some peas in the ground and they sprout, give you thousands of peas before they die. And that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years. But this year I'm like, what's the harm if I start them indoors? Well, there is no harm. It's actually a benefit. And so I'll be doing that from now on. Here in this bed, I have my broad beans planted. So think lima beans type of thing. I hope that's what it's gonna grow from here. I got a couple of flowering situation going on here, and then I planted seeds of cucumber along the line. Now, this wasn't smart of me because I also planted radishes here too, and they really took off. Now, I hope at least a couple of my cucumber plants took off. I think these ones will do great. But then I have a couple on the corners that are just really, really stunted. So I'll give them some time, let them be. Apparently, I planted dill here because I have dill growing here. And then I have a couple of other greens, so I'll be harvesting these. And then these are my Russian gold radishes, and they have been doing very good. Now with radishes, they're not always my favorite to eat raw because they're just spicy. Now, if you harvest them in the right time, yeah, they can be delicious and whatnot. I've tried roasting them because that's one of the things, you substitute potato for a radish. That's not bad. It's just not my cup of tea. My favorite way of eating radishes is with a salad that I put balsamic vinegar in. It kind of pickles them a little bit, and I love it. And I did pickle radishes maybe 2 years ago. It was delicious. Very, very good. Think of pickles, but crunchy, and it's a radish. It's so good. Then these are my beautiful irises. Now they have finished flowering and they are dying off. Now I think I need to split this up because it's kind of taken over this bed. I love intermixing flowers and veggies in my garden, but I don't want flowers taking over my garden now. Then I have a couple of bushes of milkweed. Here's one, and there's a tiny one that's kind of being blocked out by everything else. So I need to trim around it so it can get some sun. Here is my herb corner. Again, a couple of weeds that are sprouting out, but my dill over here is doing not as great. I'm telling you guys, look, this is a volunteer dill. This is a sowed dill. I'm telling you, this is so much weaker than the volunteer, but I mean, it's still there. It's still here and it's great, but it's just not the same. So there's that. Then I got a couple of parsleys finally producing their true leaves. Hopefully they take off here soon. Basil, again, I'm going to just pull this volunteer dill out because it's shading out my beautiful, precious basil. I hope this takes off here soon. Here's another basil. Again, these are sowed things. I wish I was able to have volunteers of basil, but it just gets so cold. It kills the plant, it kills the seed, everything. Here are a couple of bushes of spinach. Again, directly sowed. Not going to do that again. I'm going to start early on these. Here are my chives, just so pathetic. Here are direct sowed, and here is the started one. Now you can see the difference. The direct sow chives do much better than the started one. So that's my lesson learned. Cilantro is bolting. Thyme is taking over. So I really need to be careful with that because it's like mint. It can literally take over your garden. So I need to trim this. Directly sowed lettuce, doing great. It's actually finally starting to grow. Then look at this tomato forest. I did not sow a single one of these in here. So that's great. This is my onion patch. These onions I bought from the store. And I said, I'm not going to throw them away. I'm just going to put them in the ground. And I did. And I've been harvesting green onions from here. This plant here, funny story. So I was planting out my greens, my early started greens, cabbages, cauliflowers, Brussels sprouts, things like that. And there was a few starts that I'm like, it's just too many. I need to throw some away. And I was like, instead of throwing them away, let me just put them in here. Guys, the ones that I started and transplanted in the space that I wanted died, but this one survived. So, silly me for underestimating this guy. That's why I don't like to throw away transplants, because I'm like, what if they do amazing things like this? So I'm super stoked. I think this is a Brussels sprout, but don't quote me on that. Here's more spinach, carrots finally coming up. Guys, if you can't tell, it is starting to rain, which is amazing, but I'm trying to wrap it up. This lettuce here, I started indoors, transplanted, and like I said before, this is what I'm doing with my lettuce from now on. Okay, it is starting to actually rain, so let me wrap it up here. Finally, my sweet potatoes, guys. Sweet potato is rotting away, which is a good thing. That means it's giving life to its offsprings. So here's a slip that I'm going to rip off and actually plant separately, because that is the only way that you can get sweet potatoes. Here's another slip. And here's another slip. They're growing very good. They're going to take off and kind of actually take over this whole bed once they start vining and growing. Now, if you plant sweet potato and you don't rip off these slips, all you're going to grow is a whole bunch of slips. So if you want to grow sweet potatoes, make sure to rip those slips off, plant them by themselves, and then those slips will give you sweet potatoes. You can learn the hard way. You can grow a bunch of slips this year and then, actually grow sweet potatoes next year. But I suggest you learn this lesson now. Like, no matter how much I watered the garden, it didn't grow nearly as fast as it grows when it rains. So love that. Thank you so much for coming along, enjoying my garden. Hope I encourage you to grow something, put something in the ground. And I show my good, ugly, pretty, bad all the time, so I can encourage you that it's okay to fail. And it's actually not failure. You always are harvesting lessons. Go garden a little, and I'll see you next time. Bye.